Folks, we're just a few weeks into the new year and the world is already wild with chaos. And by the time this video goes live, I would not be surprised if things got even crazier. So for the sake of all of our sanities as a collective, let's make something with some positive vibes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dev Diary, a series where I try to make my own video games. So if you're new here and game dev videos are sort of your thing, consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you don't miss future videos. So today's project is a cozy game about space and saving things in said space. The player controls a planet-hopping blue blob and is broken down into 4 states. While on a planet, the player can move left and right to navigate around said planet, and actually anything that needs to stick to a planet uses a global planet snap function, which, thanks to a few gamemaker functions, skips the trigonometry needed to keep things within a planet's circumference. Now the player can blast off at any time with spacebar. This transitional state is really just a glorified timer to make sure that the player doesn't get stuck between on planet and in space. The in space state allows the player to move in any direction that they want. By left clicking, the player propels themselves in the opposite direction from the mouse, and they will also continuously drift in said direction if no action is taken. Now should the player come within a planet's gravitational pull, they will be sucked towards it, entering another transitional state. Now much like the takeoff state, this state ensures that the player doesn't get stuck and also preps the player to re-enter the on-planet state. Now there's more to the landing, but in order to talk about that, we need to get familiar with all of these colorful creatures surrounding the player. As you probably could guess by now, these are the creatures that are in need of saving. When the game starts, each planet spawns a random amount of creatures. These creatures are then randomly shuffled around the stage and await to be collected by the player. When near enough to one of these creatures, the player can grab them by pressing E, and this is indicated by a blue outline surrounding the creature. When collected, this temporarily removes it from the game, but records its existence to a list. This list can be checked at any time via tab menu. It's here that the player can see how many creatures they're currently holding, listed by type. And they can also even see how many creatures remain that still need saving. Now when the player lands on a planet, we check the list for any creatures matching the planet's type. If they match, the creature is reactivated, moved to the new planet, and marked as having found a home. This changes their behavior from a random patrol to instead patrolling their new home. Also, creatures who have found their home cannot be picked up. Instead, they'll give the player a little love. And fun fact, these adorable little creatures are actually not that dumb. If they so happen to find themselves near enough to a planet of their own type, they will automatically join that planet and switch themselves to having found a home. And so while the system works, the only weird thing is the way that saved creatures behave on some planets. As mentioned earlier, any unit that needs to be on a planet uses the planet snap function. This function takes into consideration the size of the planet so that units don't sink into the middle of said planet. And this works flawlessly with the player. But sometimes, and seemingly at random, creatures will ignore these offsets and dig themselves into the planet anyway. But at this point, I'm just considering it some type of homecoming ritual. Why not, right? And speaking of rituals, it's about time I remind you that if you enjoy the content, supporting me on Patreon is the best way to help me keep making it. Doing so can get you access to exclusive content and downloads, and even early access to the weekly Dev Diary videos before they're released on YouTube. Now, there is absolutely no fail state in this game. Either the player successfully saves all the creatures lost in space, or they close the game and let our digital friends float in digital space for digital forever, which is totally not positive vibes. Like, I mean, don't you see how happy these planets are? I mean, would you like to see those planets frown? Actually, speaking of which, there's a really low chance of a Meat Boy face appearing on the planet, which is just one of many features of a planet because each and every planet is randomly generated. That's right, each planet's sprite is not only drawn to scale based on their size, but they're given additional bits and bobs to create random peaks and valleys around the planet, giving each one their own unique design, though some of that uniqueness is admittedly lost due to the low resolution of the game. Yeah, regardless, I thought it made for a cool little tiny addition, you know? Another tiny addition was the fact that flying creatures that pass over planets cast a little shadow, and that was kind of the project. Now, I'm actually not sure how many of you noticed, but this was in fact a last-minute pivot. Like, the creatures that the player saves were originally enemy units that the player fought. Like, there were remnants of the original concept everywhere. Like, for example, here's some unused code meant to produce bullets for combat. Also, the fact that the creatures are, you know, just straight up named enemy. And actually, had this been the plan from the start, the entire entering/leaving a planet system used on the player would have been universal. Just so creatures didn't basically teleport to their new homes. And the whole premise was originally meant to be a turf war capture the point style game where the player trying to take over as many planets before time runs out. And of course, fighting enemies who want to take those points back. But again, after seeing the way that the last few weeks have played out, this was a much needed change of pace. Like, it's fun creating arcadey chaos and making things go boom, but sometimes it's also nice to just make something cozy and chill, And if you agree, do me a solid and continue putting out those positive vibes, because we very well may need them this year. So anyway, I hope you all dug this little cozy diversion. Let me know what you thought and what you would add to make it even better or even cozier, and maybe even share your own cozy game recommendations. Whatever's on your mind, be sure to leave them in the comments. And hey, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like. With that said, brings us to the end of today's Dev Diary, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.